Such a pleasure for me to be here this afternoon, not just for the first Miracles Day, but to just see the institution that's come up here. I had heard about MYRA from my friends, Professor Dillon and Professor Sinha and the larger community, and I'd never had a chance to actually come and see the campus, meet the people involved, etc. And I know how difficult it is to build an institution. So my, I'm really complimenting and saluting the efforts of Shalini Arts and all the people who joined her in turning this dream into a reality, and not just into a reality, but such an architectural marvel. It seems just the atmosphere, the ambiance is something that inspires us to basically think about excelling in every way possible. That's the inspiration I get from just being here for a few minutes this afternoon. Well, she promised you, what was that, intellectual challenges, things like that. And when she asked me to come and speak on this occasion, I said, well, I won't just come and do a regular speech. Let me find a way to challenge myself as well, to take this opportunity to think about what's happening in the world around us. And that's why I basically chose this theme, May You Live in Interesting Times. I'll come to that in a second, but before that, just a word or two more about institution building and the crucial role of alumni. See, I've had the good fortune of being part of institutions that have been around a very long time. And my school, St. Joseph's Boys High School, is more than 150 years old. Our Alumni Association, the Old Boys Association itself is probably 100 years old. And a few years ago, when the school decided that the old buildings needed to be replaced, a bunch of alumni, all of us came forward with some small contributions, but 3 alumni offered crores of rupees to rebuild the whole campus. One was the late Mark Mascarenhas, who founded WorldCom, which is a sports management company. But the other 2 you would have heard of. One is Sabir Bhatia, the founder of Hotmail. And the last, of course, is Rahul Dravid, our former Indian cricket captain. And each of them contributed a huge amount of resources. We built a spanking new campus on the same place, of course, spanking new buildings. And that inspires each and every one of us to want to do our part to help contribute and build an institution and to maintain that connect with our alma mater. Now, especially when it comes to business schools, this is extraordinarily important because people come to business schools not just for the campus, the faculty, the founders, but they also come for the classmates, the placements, and the alumni network that they can be part of. And alumni have a very crucial role to play in terms of inspiring the students who are on campus at any given time by visiting and engaging with them, by providing opportunities for internships in their companies wherever they are, by working with the graduating classes in preparing them for placements and helping them get placed, etc. And of course, over time, as you do well, giving back to the institution itself. The other institution that we mentioned, actually the other 2, Fordham and Wharton, where I got my degrees, I share that education with a very interesting gentleman. Any idea who went to Fordham and Wharton? Who has also studied in the same universities? Okay. He surprisingly won an election on November 8th. Yeah, Mr. Donald Trump. We are a little different, but we went to the same schools. Anyway, so that's just a feature there. Anyway, but Wharton is, itself is a business school founded more than 100 years ago as part of the University of Pennsylvania, which was founded in 1740 by Benjamin Franklin. So, those are the kinds of far-sighted efforts that people like us, a couple of 100 years later, benefit from. All right. So there's so much to be said for institution building, and whatever you can do in whatever capacity is going to make a huge difference to build this institution and to serve as a beacon of inspiration to others who want to build good institutions in the country. All right. Let me now turn to the topic itself. Right. So what do I mean by this? Actually, this phrase is supposed to be, does anyone know what this phrase is? It's a Chinese phrase. It's not just a Chinese phrase. It's supposed to be a Chinese curse, actually. Okay, so I'm not cursing anyone. I just found it interesting. It is one of 3 famous Chinese curses. Okay, the one is, may you live in interesting times. Another is, may you come to the attention of those in authority. And the third is, may the gods give you everything you ask for. All right? So these are I wouldn't call them curses. I would call them mixed blessings. Right? So may you live in interesting times essentially means that turbulence. There may be a lot of chaos, and chaos gives opportunity, but chaos also means danger and risk, and things could go wrong as well. So that's really why this is something that is a mixed blessing. But what I'm planning to do with this fairly rapid run through of a variety of topics is I just want to think about how is the world changing. Here we are, either in an MBA classroom or out there just having graduated recently and stepping into the world. And an MBA is nothing beyond a practical degree. It equips you to look at the forces that are out there and take advantage of them in some creative, profitable manner, value-creating manner. And so, really, when you think about what's going on around us, right now we're living through some very extraordinary times which present challenges, which present opportunities. So what are they? That's really what I want to take you through. Okay? Just a little graphic. Okay. So a few years ago, the Americans coined a new term. They called it VUCA, V-U-C-A. V-U-C-A stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So the speed and turbulence of change, there's a lot of stuff that happens, and it happens very fast. There's uncertainty. There's a famous phrase by one gentleman who was in the American cabinet. He said there are known knowns and known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns. He said, that's what we mean by uncertainty. Things that you just can't predict. 10 years ago, no one would have predicted the rise of the Islamic State in the ruins of Iraq and whatever else that has spawned in that neighborhood. And complexity, vast interdependencies in globally connected economies and societies, and ambiguity in a sense of, there are numerous options, numerous interpretations, and that's really part of the whole story. So let's go ahead. I often have too much text in my slides, and this is certainly one of them. What are some patterns? So if you step back and say, what patterns can you see? And with those patterns, what opportunities might emerge? Well, think about 3, 4. One is urbanization. The world is urbanizing very rapidly. I'll spend some time on that, right? People are moving towards cities. Cities are the hotbeds of activity and of value creation as well. The city of Bengaluru creates or raises as much taxes for Karnataka, as much if not more, than the rest of the state put together. Ninth wonder of the world for architecture, or something like that. And everyone will forward that very happily, okay? And then we will say, where? How come we didn't see it? Yeah. But that's the sort of thing. And what was this? Our new rupees 2000 note declared as the best currency of the world. And they were, why is it the best currency? It has an inbuilt GPS chip. It's fully washable. Try it, okay? It doesn't burn at all. Try it. Tear it into halves. You can join it. Try it. God, it's all. The experimenter in you is really excited. But that's the sort of thing that people would educated people keep forwarding this sort of stuff all the time. This is about the Shivaji statue that's coming up off the coast of Maharashtra and was criticized as a big waste of money. And somebody said, I'll have to put my glasses on, but let me just see, this is a public service message. Many are cribbing about the cost of the Shivaji statue. What they do not know is the statue is a master stroke by Modi sir, which will pay for itself many times over. The statue is made of amorphous silicon, cadmium telluride, copper, indium, gallium selenide. This is the same material used to make solar cells. Then some foreign guy comes up with some, Dr. Kirsi sent a private email to Modi sir, okay, this chap has seen it, that's ready for mainstream use. The statue will generate enough electricity to power all government offices in Mumbai, okay? All right, then The statue also has radial uniform projection and ranging technology to track boats in the Arabian Sea to prevent a repeat of the 2008 Mumbai attack. Okay, so this is the sort of thing. Okay, congratulations to all of us. I am so proud. I want a statue like this to power this campus too. Okay, so please do what we can. Alumni, you can contribute that. Anyway, the basic point is, okay, the world is changing dramatically. I am not saying that I have the answer to how to cope with all these changes. I hope that in a little bit of interaction we can come up with this. My idea was to provoke and give you a sense of the kind of changes out there in the environment. But these are not just risks. Every risk is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to think about how we can entrepreneurially make an impact. We'll have to learn to deal with, there are problems. There may, if the world has to deal with climate change, but important countries like the US say there's no climate change happening, then how are we going to get concerted action? If United Nations and other global entities are not able to do their job anymore, how are we going to get the governance that we require to work cooperatively? So all these are challenges going forward. And one opportunity set may be in the concept of sustainability, environmental, economic, social, and how all of those come together to create opportunities that will be beneficial on multiple fronts, win-win-win, as you might say, and that might be wonderful from the point of view of profits, etc. So there are no easy answers. We just need to come up with better solutions to deal with this. And the last point here really is an emphasis on skilling. When you graduate and move out, when you come back here as alumni, that's not the end of your education. I took the opportunity of this speech to immerse myself in new learning just to get a better sense of what's going on. And I would urge you to continuously keep investing in yourselves so that you are prepared for these changes. Like I said, if you've got to go engage with Japan, you need to pick up a little bit of that language. If you want to engage with Africa, you need to find out where Africa is. The first step. I'm joking, of course. What I'm trying to say is, it's not, especially sub-Saharan Africa, is not on the map for anyone other than someone visiting or going on a safari or something like that. So this is really, there are huge challenges, huge opportunities, and we need to shake ourselves out of any kind of complacency that we might have drifted into, and to embrace the world and all that it's offering going forward. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to ask questions, if there's time, of course.
It gave us a good picture of a lot of things going around. My only question was with the Industry 4.0. So obviously we know it was more in automotive and a Germany-based concept. But we do talk about Internet of Things, but it's not going to work out the same in India as an assumption, but because we have socioeconomic inequality, we have demographics. So where is that we have to start working first before implementing? Because right now I feel it is still a concept because there is no standardization model to implement in India as of now. Like, what's your take on this?
I actually, I'm not sure that we can say that India is going to take a longer time to adapt, right? I mean, just take what I have here, right? The phone, or even the smartphone for that matter. Well, our teledensity was tremendously low. We would always say that using technology would be difficult because of multiple digital divides. We wouldn't have access to the internet. We would have the internet would be in a language that our people wouldn't be able to communicate in or work with, right? So we were worried that this whole technological change would pass us by. But today that's not the case. There are more than 1 billion of these out there. And if you want to tell your driver to be ready to pick you up, you give him a missed call. I mean, that sort of thing. So he has a phone as well. Okay. And there's an internet, and there's social media, and everything that everyone seems to be on at this point in time. And so I'm not sure that especially the Internet of Things will, because Moore's law and all those, the ability to make things cheaper and faster in some ways is going to allow for embedding all kinds of chips in all kinds of devices, and they may just become routine and accessible to everybody. Okay, so that sort of thing may become something that's more common And so I wouldn't say that it's not a possibility in the near future. We just have to think through how to be prepared for that possibility. And if you're a first mover, you might be able to capture quite a bit of the value that's created there. Yeah.
You talked about, gave the instance of that Shivaji statue as fake news. But there's also an opportunity in it, because if you really do, or if that can, such a statue can be built, there will be many, several opportunities.
Yes. No. I can see the possibilities, but I cannot believe that a single statue with whatever material you use will generate enough energy, Yes, I got that. So that's yeah. Please tear the 2,000 rupee note as well. No.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
For this,
no, but I got the point very well. Yeah.
Yeah. For this, I think Bangalore Mirror has opened a column which identifies fake news. So I think more people are reading what is fake through WhatsApp nowadays.
Yes.
So that is.
Bangalore Mirror should also, while I compliment them for having launched that, should also put their New Year's Day story about mass molestation in that fake news story, because it really, for the few days, I'm not downplaying the incidents that took place, but the furor that was created gave Bangalore such a bad name, as if we are some a city of rapists or something like that, and that was massively exaggerated in my view. I'm just saying, but that's
I had one question regarding Make in India. I heard in one of the YouTube lectures by Professor Bhagavati, I think he's from Harvard.
Columbia.
Columbia.
Yeah.
He was saying that rest of the world wants Make in India to happen. I just want to know your views, because this happened, I think, a couple of years back. Down the road, there are differences of opinion, including RBI governor who went back to US. So what is your take on this?
Sure.
Thanks.
So Make in India is the slogan that Prime Minister Modi unveiled in his first Independence Day address. And basically the argument was that India should be that you don't look at India, he was asking the world not to look at India only as a market, but also as a place to invest, to make for India and to make for the rest of the world as well, right? And for this to really come alive, you need certain kinds of infrastructure, you need certain other kinds of ecosystems that should be in place. To our good fortune, we have the brain power ecosystem, right? Apple is coming to Bangalore to actually assemble initially, but it's coming partly because we also have a very good talented pool of designers and engineers and others here, right? Hyundai makes cars in Chennai. It sells one set of cars for India, but sells more advanced cars to export markets, right? Okay. Again, they're investing here not because the current doesn't go off or the power is guaranteed or anything like that, but because there are enough sharp people who can help adapt the car and shape it for the future, right? So the talent is there. The infrastructure can be created. Now they're talking about smart cities and manufacturing zones from the UPA time, etc. There's this whole new Delhi-Mumbai freight corridor, industrial corridor, and things of that sort. So there are going to be a lot of areas set up which are conducive for industrial investment. Okay. The challenge, though, is the nature of manufacturing, if that is changing, right? And if that whole big mass manufacturing effort that China used to build on, if that moment in history has passed us by, then we may not be able to make in India in the way that the Prime Minister dreams. We may be able to make in India in a slightly different way, but it is something that's moving forward. But we may be able to make different kinds of things in India. It need not be physical products. We can, beam lectures from here to other parts of the world and export education services, right? That's also make in India, but it's something else altogether different, right? So those are possibilities. But I don't think that we are anyway going to meet the aspirations that that have been laid out. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. It makes us proud to know that a member of parliament is so knowledgeable and wonderful. It's so wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
Well, please come to Delhi and see and meet my colleagues. There's some immensely knowledgeable people there. Knowledge of the right things and the wrong things. Yeah, so.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, as we know, in recent past, Indian government has taken one policy as part of which they have reduced research grants in various IITs and IIMs. So my question is, if this policy of disinvestment in research continues, will we be able to compete with other rising economies in the long term?
Okay, I don't know this exact detail that you're mentioning, but if it is there, it's the exact wrong thing to do. See, our strength is our brains. Our strength is the ability to use those brains for value creation, for innovation, etc. And for that, we need to trigger a research mentality amongst our people. Okay, I'll tell you, when I was going through St. Joseph's College, we spent half our time, bunking, hanging around in canteens. Yeah, the atmosphere was very different. When I went to the Ivy League and literally got my behind kicked because it was a very competitive place and nobody was focused on shortcuts or anything like that. You had to create value, contribute, and do amazing stuff. Okay, and about 10-15 years of being in that kind of environment, first as a PhD student and then as a teacher on the tenure track, right? I learned the value of research and knowledge creation and things like that. And that's why even today, when I have to come here, even though it's probably cost me a lot of sleep, you still put in the effort to pick up some new knowledge and create a new lecture here, which has helped me grow and has helped, I think, hopefully, all of you also think about things a little differently as well. So that is really what you have to nurture and inculcate, right? The research experience. And if you're cutting the opportunities for people, especially in quality institutions like that, that would just be very, very counterproductive. China, in contrast, has put in huge amounts of resources into research, into its top universities. It pays its professors spectacular salaries to attract them back from the rest of the world, and now finds its universities in some of the best, amongst the top in the world, in those rankings. India doesn't figure. I mean, part of the problem is because we created islands of excellence. My University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School is a part of that. It's just a business school. It has Nobel laureates in the medical school. It has Nobel laureates in the economics and arts faculty. Things like that. And it has a communications department. It's got engineers, where the first big computer was created. Things like that. So it's all under the same university umbrella. So even though you're not necessarily interacting, you're still inspired by the achievements of everybody. Here, the scientists are in IISc, the managers are in IIM, the biologists are in NCBS, astrophysicists somewhere else. We haven't pooled the talent together. We tend to fragment more. So that's something that's, this has been historically the pattern. I'm not sure we'll turn it around, but, and then there are other things that are happening in the world around us, which we are somewhat helpless to try and affect as individuals, but about which we can do things in a cumulative manner. Climate change is one of them. We're living through demographic transitions. We are part of a very, very young nation, but we're also living in a world where some of the richest parts of the world are aging, and that presents another set of opportunities. And then, of course, technology is changing so rapidly that we are going to find that we're in a world which is very, very different from the one that we grew up in. Okay, and this is some more. This is just talking again about demographics and the Earth's limits and things like that. And here, it's trying to make a sense of what are the implications. So if there's changing demographics, then if large portions of the richer world are aging, and actually even significant numbers in India are aging, there's a huge opportunity there. People are going to live longer, they need to be taken care of, and so there are huge opportunities in terms of health care, in terms of palliative care, in terms of elderly care, etc. And if you think about the Earth's limits, then we need to think very, very quickly about how to get more resources from less. as the slogan goes, more crop per drop, things like that. And there's so much more that we need to in that arena. And of course, with technology and knowledge and everything changing, the world is very, very different. We are still in the era of concrete buildings and structures and classrooms, but the world going forward may have a very, very different notion of what a classroom is, how education is delivered. There's a concept called a flipped classroom, where people and students study on their own and they just show up to discuss, and they may not even show up physically for those discussions. So lots and lots of changes going on around us. So what kinds, let me just take you through a very quick tour. Technological changes, right? Just about 15 years ago, we had more than 6 billion people and about 500 million connected gadgets, right? By the next 2-3 years, we'll have about 7.5 billion people, but about 50 billion gadgets that are interconnected, right? So what do we mean by this? We mean basically, actually I'm talking about gadgets which are interconnected, meaning we're moving towards something called the Internet of Things. Everything has something embedded in there which allows it to be connected and programmed, and so you can be in the office and you can turn on your cooker and get the rice ready before you reach home. Those sorts of things are also possible. Now, okay. And we're also witnessing the growth of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence basically means that humans over time are going to be less required to run particular kinds of machines, particular kinds of operations, and will be replaced by gadgets of various kinds, robots on the work floor, on the shop floor, etc. And believe it or not, some of the highest paid jobs, investment bankers on Wall Street, are slowly being replaced by algorithms, where in split seconds you have trading going on and value being captured, etc. So across the board, the BPO industry, many of the things that we saw employing large numbers of youngsters, we're going to see things move and change, okay? And we're going to see so much emerging around us. See, nowadays when you sit in a modern car, there is already a GPS system. Someone like me, who's very, very good at mental maps, while my family, of course, is the exact opposite, and they keep asking me for directions every time. Now I find myself outdated and useless because the GPS will allow them to reach anywhere without ever having to ask me for directions anymore. Okay, so that's the sort of thing. Everywhere around us, we now have gadgets that are able to do things that only people with some special skills were able to do before. And then soon you might have wearable clothes which have something embedded in them, and all kinds of changes that we can only imagine. And of course, the ubiquitous mobile. The mobile phone now is a platform that allows you to do a million things, and that itself has been changing so much. Shalini was very kind to talk about some of my NGO activities, but about 10 years ago, I had gone to Nokia's office in Bangalore. And that time, I don't think we had smartphones. We had the old phones with some kind of a camera, and talked about creating a program called Bell the Cat. The idea was that that Nokia would do something where a photo could be taken of a broken road or something like that, and that could be uploaded to the corporation engineer's office, and you'd alert the person right away. And then instead of pointing fingers, we would hold hands. We would, those who exposed more and more problems, and the officers who solved more and more problems would both be rewarded and commended. That was the original plan. The technology wasn't there at that time. Today, it's already in, I have, not through me, but through other programs, you have similar examples that are doing really well. So going forward, you'll see more and more of this. Mobile phones are now ubiquitous. Even in poor people's hands, you find mobile phones. And what shall we say, telecommunications has become very inexpensive in the Indian context. Okay. And this is also changing the nature of communication from one-way communication from, say, a centralized source to now one to many, many to many. And people are busy creating content for everybody else. You don't have to be an official Doordarshan or something like that to be able to create content, anyone can now go out there and create the content and share it. The other interesting thing from a business point of view is with the internet, with these kinds of technologies, people have been able to create mega companies with billions of dollars of revenue with very few people, and actually without occupying too much space, right? And especially something like Snapchat, where the messages also disappear. You don't even need storage beyond a particular point. Okay, so you have all these kinds of new business possibilities that have emerged on these new platforms. And there are other challenges as well, though. When you think about how manufacturing is changing, if you go towards this part, now people are moving away from the old assembly line, and so people will be moving towards very quick prototyping, very quick adapting of products to people's needs. And the people who would have the most value in this domain are designers. And now you have what's called sort of 3D printing, things like that, where whole machines, whole products can be fabricated right here based on computerized designs. And so this is a whole new world that's awaiting us. And this, of course, is going to dislocate a lot of people. And it's coming at a time when India was thinking about moving more people from farm to factory. We were hoping that just as China got a little costlier, we'd be able to create some new mass manufacturing opportunities here. But it doesn't look like manufacturing is going in that direction. Maybe what China was able to capture was a great deal of value at one historical moment. It may not be available to the rest of us. There'll be other opportunities, but not necessarily at the same scale. And this, of course, means that we should be worried about joblessness. And one study in 2013 said that 702 occupations had potential for being computerized, and half the workers in America had jobs that ran the risk of being automated. Okay, so this is not a great, in some ways it's not so great in terms of automation. But on the other hand, when you think about our own work, right? When I joined IIM, we had 2 faculties to share 1 secretary. And people like me, who are used to writing our own letters, using our own computers, etc., once a year I would ask the secretary to clean my office and get my desk, back to some semblance of order. But otherwise, the only use we had was for filling out particular kinds of reimbursement forms, which were too dense for the rest of us to understand. But otherwise, we didn't really use them at all. And now I think you have 1 secretary for a whole floor. That's how the game has changed. And possibly you don't even need them going forward. There's so much automation as well. And this is what the implication might be for India. The great, next door, if you go to the Infosys campus, the campus has been built to train tens of thousands of people a year, right? Well, over time, that campus may end up finding other uses, because they may not be hiring that many people going forward, and therefore we need to see where these youngsters are going to go, what kind of value add they're going to add to themselves, because the demand may not be there at the same level. All right. Then, along with this, we have other challenges, of course, and those have to do with the fact that we are in a very, very data-driven society. Everywhere around us, there are embedded computers in some ways, and this allows us to work seamlessly across various domains, and it could offer many, many opportunities that enable tremendous, for example, energy efficiency, right? The moment you know that there's nobody in a room, the lights can dim. Well, something else can change. Lots of the heating can be switched off. Lots of things like this could happen, and those are good for us. But there's also a little bit of a downside, and I do want to address that. Okay, the danger is that if everything that we do can be tracked, right, then we could become inhabitants in a surveillance society, which means that somebody out there can track every single movement of ours. Now, when we think about surveillance societies, the flags that are out there are of China, South Korea, and the late German Democratic Republic, right? And then there's a new totalitarian state, not really, but that's out there with a different flag, and that flag is that of Facebook, right? Facebook knows everything that you've done, who you've been searching for, who you've been stalking, whose pictures you like to look at, and how often, and basically it then tailors its ads to your preferences, right? So over time, and maybe it even now the news feed that you get is also tailored to which ones that you normally click like on, which you linger on, which you read in more detail, etc. So over time, what you're ending up is you're going to land up in a more of an echo chamber. Okay, the people whose views you're exposed to and the kind of ideas that you engage with will be similar to yours, and so the ability of the internet to to give us an opportunity to engage with multiple points of view starts to get a little diminished. Okay. Well, this is, of course, 1984 and the big brother concern that we have. If someone can track whatever phone calls you make, whatever emails you send, what all you watch, and what you what you purchase, etc., it becomes a bit too much. There's as it is when we're talking now of a movement towards a less cash society. My senior colleague Chidambaram the other day said, why wrote in the Indian Express actually. He said, why should the government know whether an old man buys adult diapers, whether a young couple buys condoms? Why should you know that? Why should somebody be able to track that and identify it? So he was talking about the need for cash to still play a role in the larger economy. Well, if everything is connected, if everything you do is trackable, is recorded somewhere, then it's going to be very, very difficult to step out of that. So maybe there's a market. In the US, there used to be a market for what they called speed detectors, right? Or radar detectors, actually. Because the cops have radar detectors to catch speeding people, there would be another gadget to say, when is that machine on? And that would alert you and you'd slow down. So maybe there'll be a whole set of opportunities in breaking the surveillance society. Okay, so when you're in a business school, we've got to keep talking about these opportunities. And I'm not saying that is a, I'm saying if people prefer something like that, then there should be an opportunity for it, as long as it's legitimate. Okay, climate change is another major concern, and the worry is that we're looking at 2, 3, 4 degrees worth of climate change. And this has huge implications. It has implications for air quality, for biodiversity, the amount of water we have, for forests, etc. And actually the way the world is, we live and depend a lot on soil moisture, for example, right? And if climate gets hotter by a couple of degrees on a continuous basis, the moisture levels change. What crops you could grow in a particular area changes, and the whole agricultural ecosystem will change, and our ability to survive through those transitions gets challenged. And that's a real problem going forward. And then, of course, there are all these issues about diseases, right? Every time a new disease crops up, the Zika virus is the latest that we see emerging out of Brazil, etc. I mean, the effect is devastating. And it's like, how are you going to deal with these things? And the big worry is climate change will allow for more of these vector-borne diseases to really emerge and continue. Everything else that we do in the larger environment to nurture that. The diseases that we're talking about today, dengue, chikungunya, things like that, we had never heard of when I was a kid. These are all newer diseases that seem to have emerged. And of course, the dangers of heat stroke and things of that sort. All these have a huge problem for us. The thing that we don't think about is that the earth is not just a piece of land, it's not just some water flowing, it's not just the air around it, it's actually an ecosystem, and just replacing a cubic foot of soil would take a huge amount of effort given what all services that ecosystem provides in terms of plants and things like that. Okay, just to give you an example, in New York City, you can turn the tap and you'll get very nice sparkling water flowing through the tap. And where's this coming from? It's coming from a few hundred miles north, in some very nicely protected lakes. So this is pure water from nature that's being piped into New York City. There's a beautiful river also called the Hudson that flows right there. but it's a bit polluted. So if you wanted to clean it to the same level of purity, you'd have to spend some billions of dollars for that plant, right? So what nature is giving you for free, you would have had to spend so much more. And so we tend to devalue what comes for free and learn our lessons only when we are forced to put in those plants to clean up the water, right? And this is what we've done in Bangalore City also. We took all the existing lakes and filled them up with various things, and now we are wondering how do we harvest rainwater, how do we sustain the city and things like that. Anyway, so there are all kinds of things that nature gives us and that we are often ignoring. And going forward, we're looking at we'll need 50% more energy, 40% more water, 35% more food, and where on earth is this all going to come from? And if it's going to come from the middle of Africa, how are we going to get it here? You know, things like that. So we do need, there are going to be huge challenges before us caused by climate change, and as a nation, as entrepreneurs, we need to think of the opportunities as well that this gives us. When it comes to energy, we already see the huge solar mission in this country, the efforts to harness the kinds of renewable sources that we have. And we have inventors like Elon Musk, who's come up with new kinds of battery packs, who's coming up with ways of harnessing electrical technology for vehicles and things like that. So we are hoping, the technological optimists amongst us, that we will be able to address the energy challenge. But how much more water can we get and from where? How much water is there in the Kaveri? What is climate change going to do to monsoon patterns? And where's our food going to come from? All these are challenges going forward. So one worry that we have is that if things get worse, we'll be faced with a political problem of what is called environmental migrants, climate refugees, people leaving areas because they can't live there anymore, all right? And this is not something new. If you actually think about the Indus Valley civilization, maybe that disappeared because something changed in terms of its access to water resources and things like that. Maybe it was a river course that changed. Who knows? We don't know the answer. But we are dependent much more than we think on nature and what it offers us. And when things change, cities will be abandoned and people will move and go to other countries, and there will be lots of challenges going forward. There will also be, one second, let me just go back here. You know, some of these areas here, they're talking about, these are hurricane risks, okay? So one of the other problems we're going to have is intensity and severity of storms will get worse, right? Already when Chennai floods once, you saw people die, the city come to a halt. You know, just imagine if things like this were to happen every few months, right? How are we going to cope with that? That's part of the challenge going forward. And India is listed as part of the countries that are vulnerable to what, well, I have to pull out my glasses to read that. It has to do with desertification, drought, and worsening agricultural patterns. Okay. And when this happens, there's also a problem that you know, nature cuts across political boundaries, right? We may have to work, you know, we may have to face the problem of more and more people wanting to move out of Bangladesh into India if parts of Bangladesh get flooded as a result of sea level rise, right? And Bangladesh is not small in terms of population, right? And we are next door, right? And so that could be a major challenge. How are we going to deal with this? And this is just some thing off the internet. Imagine in 2033 if Bangladesh says they are going to seed clouds and do something for climate change, and there'll be all kinds of protests against that, and they'll say, no, it's for self-defense, because they're the ones so much more vulnerable. Some parts of the world, like the Maldives, etc., may entirely disappear if the sea level rises. And the people most affected by these changes are essentially poorer people in developing countries, okay? So it's not even like they have the resources to be resilient, to be able to mitigate things. So that's another challenge. And so there are opportunities there, as I mentioned, in energy efficiency, in resilient farming, in various other ways in which we can reduce our impact on the earth. The other major changes, of course, are what we are experiencing in the last couple of years. See, all these years we were focusing on globalization. We said that the world is getting so interconnected that, you know, and we were told about global supply chains, global value chains, etc. And the way how even this the phone in my pocket has parts that are, have been built somewhere else, assembled somewhere else, will soon be assembled in Bangalore itself, and it's an iPhone. And that's the sort of global value chain that we had talked about. But now there's a movement away from this globalization, and part of it is a backlash against economic changes. But that backlash has been provoked partly by populist leaders who are arguing for their nationals against globalization. And what do they do? Okay. So, I mean, basically, it's led to, for example, the United Kingdom getting out of the European Union, Brexit as we call it. Okay. And what's the real problem, of course, is that inequality has also arisen. As the world has become wealthier, as it has become globally more connected, inequality has also risen. A small portion of professionals and others have managed to capture the bulk of the value from the wealth that has been created, and people who used to have good jobs, say working on a factory floor, are now finding themselves out of a job. And part of this has to do with decisions taken by individual CEOs and boards of corporations saying, well, we'll shut down our factories in America, we can get the same thing built in China for a fraction of the cost, and somebody paid the human price, right? Okay. And the company did well, but lots of people lost their jobs. So over time, it's created a little bit of a resentment, not little bit, tremendous resentment against globalization and outsourcing and things like that, right? The backlash against outsourcing you can see in Mr. Trump's rhetoric against H-1B visas and what he threatens to do. He may not do anything, but he threatens to do things. And the truth of the matter is, governments can't really regulate the investment decisions by MNCs. One of the first things that Trump did was to threaten companies, saying, if you want to get some break here, if you want to get some benefits here, you need to put that factory here. He was threatening 2-3 companies. And some of them agreed, some of them didn't. But basically, they'll do whatever they choose to do. And so basically, you have economic populism, people who are losing jobs, resenting the rise of the 1%, okay, the 99% to claim that we're being left out. And then, of course, the fact that things are getting costlier, healthcare, basic social security, etc. And therefore, the slogans, let's make America great again, become something that becomes very, very powerful. Even in this country, you have populist leaders who argue that nothing happened for the last 60 or 70 years. If nothing happened, we wouldn't be here. But most people tend not to ask that question. Anyway, okay, so this sort of thing has happened not for the first time in various episodes of history. You've seen this kind of a populist backlash, and you've seen this can also lead to fascism, to authoritarianism, to negative sentiments overpowering positive ones. America, a country that was built on immigration, has just seen an Indian engineer killed in Kansas, and today in the afternoon I was seeing a headline which said, Indian businessman shot dead, right? Okay, so, and you'll all be saying, what have we done to them? We haven't done anything to them. It's just that, and we haven't necessarily taken away their jobs either, but we look different, and that may be sufficient for people who are provoked by rhetoric to lose their balance and do something crazy. Okay, and so what could happen? How do you respond to these populist movements? Are countries retreating or embracing others? So from globalization, we may be moving to polarization, islandization, and commonization, whatever those things mean. And basically, we're very, very worried that polarization, the difference, people moving apart, more tensions rising, etc., could lead to a very, very volatile world. Imagine if you have, as it is already, we start to see that when there is economic and political tension, if there is war in a certain region, immediately opportunities that could have been there for value creation all disappear. And polarization, political polarization, worsens things in a way that can only hurt economies and nothing else, unless you're in the defense industry. Okay. Now, this is not something new. In 1992, a scholar called Babar had basically talked about the two competing forces. He had called them jihad versus McWorld. Jihad, he said, was people breaking away and retreating to tribal and other identities, religious identities. McWorld was a force that united and which got everyone coming together because of standardization and things like that. The Mac, of course, coming from McDonald's, which promises standardization in terms of its food products. Okay, and the interesting thing is they're both not really respectful of democratic values.